and just a great resource for us. And we also have Maggie Grover, a local employment law attorney, who's been practicing employment law for
30.
Yeah, 30 years, okay. I think you're also a neutral, is that right? Okay. She is a frequent lecturer for the ABA, for the San Francisco Bar Association, and she's, for like the 30th time, a super lawyer. So we're really lucky to have her here with us to help us understand the healthcare program. So, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to do sort of a switch off and on, so it makes it keeps you awake. I had to do my Covered California training on Friday, and I was very happy that we had at least 2 presenters so that it made the voices change and it wasn't monotonous with that Covered California material. I'm just curious. I like to know my audience, so if you wouldn't mind, just real quick, telling me how large, maybe what your first name is and how large your firm is. So it gives us an idea of, Maggie might like it too, but yeah, gives an idea of maybe how to tailor things a little bit. So if you would mind.
Martin Johnson, I'm a law student in my final year, so no firm yet.
Okay. Well, welcome. Okay.
Gary Novak is a private wealth management group at UBS specializing in small businesses.
Katie Wilkie. I'm a sole practitioner in family law, but I also am the president of a small business, about 30 employees, energy sales.
Okay.
Chris Stafford, firm about 6 employees.
Meredith Gary, I live about 60.
I'm Joanne Brooks. I'm a student here, but I worked in United Healthcare before for many years. I'm interested to get experience on this.
Do you know why they didn't want to participate in the exchange? Any inside information?
It's been while I was here.
You didn't make that decision.
I'm Maureen Ferguson, and it's just myself and 2 others.
Great.
Robert Blackstock, lawyer in a small firm, 4 actual employees. May not use this information for our firm, but I'd just like to get a little more familiar with the legislation as well.
Sorry. What are you doing?
I'm Dan Maloney. I work at Mullen Law Firm. There are 30 attorneys and 6 employees total.
Elisa Greco, I'm a student here at JFK, but my background is nursing, so I'm very curious to see which direction the Affordable Act will take.
Okay. So are a lot of people in healthcare.
Yeah.
All those John Muir employees that are getting laid
Oh,
off.
yes.
Right?
Former employee, 10 years with John Muir.
Okay.
Susan Angelos, I'm with Livingston Law Firm, and we have 18 people.
Lucia Gordon, and I'm not employed, but I have to pay for my own insurance right now, so that's why I'm here. So.
Hi, Colleen. We've spoken. I'm Horace Gray.
Oh, okay.
I'm with Buckland, Provine Brothers and Smith. We have 17 lawyers. I'm the senior litigation counsel. I litigate healthcare and disability, life, health law cases.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I didn't catch that. If I'd heard your voice. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Oh, hi, I'm Suzette Torres, and this is Denise. Our small firm. You're at 12 employees.
I'm Elva Harding, and I'm a solo real estate attorney in Walden Creek.
I'm Jack Firestone. I'm retired from the securities.
Okay. Retired but not over 65?
Yes.
Over 65? Okay. Well, maybe it was a compliment there. We're not going to address too much on Medicare, right? That's what, okay.
Kate Gonzalez, for your firm.
Okay.
Teresa Hurley with the Bar Association, but I'm also interested in, I lived in New Zealand for a while, and so it's very interesting seeing these changes, because when I lived there, they were trying to go the other way, and all of the Americans were like, no, don't do it, don't do it. So,
Okay.
Ann Batten, 10X Law Group in Point Richmond. We have 5 attorneys and 6 staff.
Jack Cantrell, Cantrell and Callahan, employment law firm, 4 people.
Okay. So mostly, with the exception, I think I heard 60, most everyone, and a lot of them say Maggie, right? But most everyone else under 50 employees. Right?
So we can take my part and just throw it away.
No. Okay, with that, So, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, the ACA, FIPACA, Obamacare, there are a number of names that it has, so it depends on perhaps how you're feeling, what you want to call it. I kind of make the joke that it doesn't seem particularly affordable, but I'll get into that later. A little bit on the history of it. And this is what we're going to cover today. A little bit on the history, a timeline. I will cover some things that have already happened from the insurance side of things and things that are coming for small, particularly for small groups, since that's mostly what we're talking about under 50 employees. Compliance issues. I'm also going to address some new product information, some very basics about it, because even though we're up against the deadline of October 1st for the exchange to be open, all of the product information is not available for 2014. So the exchange products are basically available. We don't know what the carriers are going to offer outside the exchange. I'm going to address some changes in the census, how we gather data, and what's going to be required of employers to provide to an agent like myself if you're shopping your coverage. A little bit on the limit on the waiting periods, and then Covered California, I'll get to that, which is the marketplace or the exchange. The new term we're supposed to be using is marketplace, not exchange anymore. We've both actually discussed this, making sure you ask questions along the way. I like it to be more of a, not a monologue, more of a dialogue, if we could do that. So please feel free to raise your hand or shoot out a question. I think Maggie will agree. Okay. So a little bit on the history. Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was actually two bills that were signed. The second one was a reconciliation bill, both enacted in March. Essentially, we talk about things from March 23rd, 2010. And so we'll talk about plans. A grandfathered plan is a plan that was in existence prior to March 23rd of 2010. And I can tell you Kaiser has some, but there aren't that many out there because insurance companies have changed their plans or have eliminated them. So there's more history. Actually, the Kaiser Family Foundation has a great, wonderful website with lots of information on just the history of healthcare and healthcare reform. Starting, the timeline I looked at last night started in 1912. And how many times bills or laws have been either suggested, enacted, not continued. It is very interesting. So this is new territory for me, although I've been in the business for over 20 years. I'm just wondering from my side, what's it going to look like in a couple years? I honestly don't know. So here's some basics on the timeline. Some things that, and I'm actually just going to toss this up here for now and let you glance at it, and I'm going to let Maggie take over because a number of these things I'm going to address again in future slides. But I just wanted to have some things that you could see, some things that have already happened in 2010. When I do an employee meeting, so if you hired me as your agent, and we do an employee meeting for your group, I usually give a little bit of information about what's already happened, and a big thing to tell the employees is, hey, there are preventive benefits. And the preventive benefits are for everyone. As we age, they increase the number of preventive benefits essentially that are available, and the employer's paying for it because the preventive benefits are covered at no copay, before any deductible, as long as you're in network. That's one of the main things that's in here. So these are a few things, and then I'll just let you. Okay.
So for most small employers and for solos, for people that are working for themselves, the health benefit exchange or marketplace is going to be the most important thing to know about. And right now you are seeing probably advertising the benefits of Covered California. The Affordable Care Act required each state to adopt some kind of health care marketplace. And they could be an individual within the state setup, they could be a state federal partnership, or they could default to the federal. California, at least the people that operate Covered California, have announced that we are leading edge, we're out ahead of everybody else, even though everything is happening at the very last minute. So what are people in Tennessee doing? I don't know. But they've had town hall presentations in the last 2 months all around the state explaining what Covered California is. And the folks that run Covered California have met with insurance carriers in various locales, trying to find things that are going to fit that locale. For example, in San Francisco, one of the insurance carriers that's available is a Chinese insurance carrier, and that's available only in San Francisco. And there's another one in Sacramento that is local to Sacramento, and one in San Diego. And so that is among the menu of insurance options that you can choose from if you are going to Covered California. It is simply a marketplace to get insurance. And theoretically, There will be controls on what the costs are that will, in the long term, result from overall savings, but because we're going to better manage our health care. Now, you can listen to the other side, and they're going to say, costs are going to go up, costs are going to go up. And there are people that have good, solid, rational sounding reasons on both sides of that argument. And I think you're seeing costs going up right now.
Right.
And so the insurance provided through the exchange has to have certain minimums. They have to provide basic preventive care. They have to provide pediatric care. They have to provide dental for children. And they're still adding the coverages. I just got an email yesterday, I think, saying, oh, we finally identified the pediatric dental care providers here. Some of the larger insurers are covering statewide. Blue Shield is part of it, and Kaiser is, right? Now, who can use a health benefit exchange? Basically, everyone has the opportunity to look individually at a health benefit exchange. Likely, the people that do not have employer-provided insurance are going to be the people that first use the health benefit marketplace. Why? It's more out of your pocket if you're not on the employer's plan, and you're probably. But a lot of the providers have calculators where you can look at what you are paying for your insurance and what you would pay for your insurance if you went to the health benefit exchange and get various kinds of coverages. And there are different tiers of coverage within the exchange. And so you can say, I'm a young, healthy person, and I'm not going to have any accidents, and I'm just going to get the basic minimum coverage. Or you can say, I have a pre-existing condition, and I'm wealthy, and I want the coverage that's going to be paying for 90% of my health care costs. And so all of those are available through the health benefit exchange, and you may want to buy something that's better than what your employer offers if your employer offers it, or your employer doesn't offer insurance. You actually are going to be obligated to provide your own. And so then you have to look at the health benefit exchange. There are open enrollment periods for health benefit exchange policies, just like any other policy. The open enrollment period starts in October. It will end on the 31st of March this time. It's a really long open enrollment period to get people up and running in the health benefit exchanges. It has similar triggers for outside of open enrollment changes, like the spouse who is providing the insurance passes away, you lose your job, you add a child. You can, when you have major life changes, you can still go into a health benefit provider, even though it's not an open enrollment, but there will be also annual open enrollment periods. Questions there? You guys are quiet. So, if I use Covered California, can I get tax credits? You know, there are tax credits for small employers who can go to the Covered California programs and get insurance. It is unlikely that anybody in California is ever going to be able to use those, because it is based upon the average income. And if your employment average income is $50,000 or higher, you do not qualify for any of the tax credits as a small employer. And it is a sliding scale between $25,000 average income and $50,000 average income. You may or may not. It goes up as you go down to the 25. But really, in California, in the Bay Area, do you have an average, any workplace that has an average income of under 50? Not very often. Because can I get a subsidy? Individuals can get subsidies. It is a tax subsidy, and it is designed, again, as a sliding scale from 139 to 400% of the minimum living wage, minimum, why am I having this blank?
The
Federal, yeah,
the federal poverty level?
thank you, federal poverty level. So if you are over 400% of the federal poverty level, you will not be eligible for any of the tax subsidies. Again, it does not adjust for the cost of living in a particular environment. So people here are going to be barely making it and be eligible, and may not even be eligible for subsidies.
Just the federal poverty level, actually, because I looked it up to see if I would qualify, my husband and I, and the earnings had to be less than 60,000. I think it's 60,040 to get any credit at all. That was the 400% of the federal poverty level for a family of 2. So we don't have any dependents at home.
And
we won't be applying.
And the employees that you have, if they are purchasing their own insurance because you're not providing it, or because they want to purchase their own insurance, are at the same subsidy level under whether they purchase through Covered California or through a different program outside of Covered California. So what are the employer's obligations? A lot of it depends on the number of employees that you have. And so what employers are urged to do in 2013 is figure out how many employees you have, because the obligations kick in next year for the most part. So if you have 50 or more full-time employees, then you are at the you gotta provide insurance level. What is a full-time employee? Anybody that works more than 30 hours per week or 130 per month on average. That's full-time. What about 2 employees that work 15 hours per week average? They are combined and they count as a full-time employee. What about seasonal workers? If you run a vineyard and you hire a bunch of people for the crush, if you do not exceed 50 for more than 120 days, then you're okay. But if you have 50 for 121 days, then you are at 50 or more employees. So watch how long those seasonal employees are on your payroll. What the number of employees you have today throughout 2013 affects what your obligations will be in 2014. The number of your employees in 2014 will affect your obligations in 2015. So it's not something that is static. If you are a growing workforce, you need to watch that. Yes?
Here's a question I got this morning to follow up on your vineyard example. Let's say one individual owns 2 vineyards and has a total of 50 employees working at both. He doesn't work at both vineyards because they do essentially the same thing. He asked me, can I turn over one of my vineyards to my son, claim that that's now a separate company, and split up the workers and avoid having to provide insurance for them that way, rather than 25 at one and 25 at the other?
I got the same question from a company that runs apartments. Can I put our handy people into one, and have it a maintenance company, and our management people in another one, and have it a management company? No. As long as you have the same essential control over both companies, you're going to be counting them as a single company for the purposes of this. And one thing that I think you can do is you can outsource your employees so that you are hiring through Kelly or some other legitimate temporary service provider, because those workers then become that service provider's employees. But can you split up an existing business? Not unless you're really selling it away and you don't have control over it. There are actually lots of decisions in the area of the discrimination laws, because people tried to do this to get around the anti-discrimination provisions, which applied only to 25 or more employees, so that was the federal level. And the courts have just said, no, we're going to look at the control group. If it's the same people controlling the corporation, and father-son is probably gonna look like the same person. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
What about, is it nationwide employees, so if you have employees in different states?
Yes.
What about international employees?
I don't know that question, but shoot me an email and I'll look it up for you. Do you know, Colleen?
I don't know. So the corporation is based here, say in California?
Yeah, we have offices in California and Oregon and Washington, but we also have a couple of people working internationally.
So you're concerned that those couple people could put you over 50, or are they
Well,
eligible?
not today, but, you know,
Yeah.
a few months ago, a few months from now, maybe.
Now, one of the things that I usually say at the beginning of these talks is, this is an evolving area. The regulations really are coming out on a daily basis, and I signed up for a couple of updates from the Department of Labor, and I get at least 2 or 3. We've got new regulations this week on this area, and some of these are things that I haven't had to work through yet. I don't have clients that are sort of on the cusp of being at 50 if you count their French employees. So, but I'm glad to look at it.
Are the international employees, do they appear on your, like if they, on the quarterly wage and tax statement, the DE9C or anything like that?
You think that's what it is?
Well, because that's how, from my standpoint, on the insurance side, that's how they look at the employees. So we have to account for every employee that's on that list. The complication also is, from an insurance standpoint, is that the insurance companies want a greater percentage of people that are in California. So when you say, I heard you say you've got people in California, Oregon, Washington, and then, so if the lion's share of the employees are in California, it will be a California-based plan, and then we'd have to account for the employees that show up on the payroll or the wage forms.
Okay, thanks.
But I don't know, I mean, that's how, we would be looking at it saying that's if you're 50, I don't know what the law says, that's.
Yeah, and I'm sorry,
We'll try not to hire anybody else.
or if you do, you just hire them, you have a completely separate one. Yeah. So what right now is coming up is the requirement to give notice to your employees. And initially, this notice was to be given in March of this year. But here's the rub. The Department of Labor was going to give us a model notice, and they didn't have it done in March. Yes?
I'm assuming the notice is only required if you have 50+ employees.
No. Every employer with employees is required to give the notice. So everybody.
Whether you offer coverage or not.
Yes. And I'll show you the model notice in a moment. You have to limit the waiting period if you provide insurance. The federal standard is 90 days, the California standard is 60. And the California standard may be amended to make it, but it's not going to be 90. There is a tax reporting requirement. If you are providing insurance benefits, you now report on the employee's W-2 the value of those benefits. And here is the model plan. You can almost see the website, but it explains.
You can just hand that out to
You can just hand it out. Print it, hand it out. There's a second page to it that has information that is particular to you, but you know who you are and the information about the employer. But this is the model approved form. Yes.
Did you give it to us as a handout?
It is in the handout.
It's very
But,
small.
okay, it's at the Department of Labor website, and they have several places that link to it on
But
the
if you
Department
just
of.
Google like OMB number 1210-0149, it should pop right out.
It should. And actually, if you say health insurance notice, it will actually pop up.
Your insurance company will have something, they'll have a link to it too, whatever insurance company, they will, because they have them usually on if you have a login page for the employer, they'll have it. And it's available in Spanish too.
Due by October 1st?
Due by October 1st. The Department of Labor has now announced that there will not be penalties for handing it out, for failing to hand I imagine that the penalties will still be around if you fail to hand it out next year. You also have to provide if you do provide insurance to any employees, and this is an area where I'm seeing a lot of questions. I provide insurance to my executives, but not to my line staff. The people that work in the fields or the people that work on the machines in the manufacturing plants do not get insurance, but the executives do. What do I do? Well, you have to provide this summary of benefits to all employees now, if you are providing it. So, what that's going to do is it's going to let people know that they're not getting treated the same as the guys in the big office. And so there will be more questions about why am I not getting this insurance benefit. And if you are a smaller employer, less than 50, you do not have to provide the insurance. Now, in 2015, there will be a requirement, a prohibition against providing insurance to the top 25% of your workforce and not the less compensated employees. The regulations for that have not yet been passed, so I can't tell you exactly how that's going to work. But that company that's providing the head office with insurance, but not the people in the field or not the people in the plant, is going to be in trouble in 2015 if the regulations get passed on time and enacted and enforced. There are limits on flexible spending. Those went into play 2 years ago. And you used to be able to use your flexible health savings account for over-the-counter medications, and you cannot. And you used to be able to have more money withdrawn for pre-tax purposes to be spent on healthcare than you can. The new cap is $2,500. And the theory behind this is that if people are not able to use pre-tax dollars to pay for these health costs, they're still going to be spending the money on the health costs, and it's going to be taxable money. So it will increase the tax base, and this increase can be moved over to pay for the subsidies for the people who are at subsidy levels. Workplace wellness programs. If an employer did not have a workplace wellness program in place, and in 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, and subsequently adopts a wellness program, and that can be a yoga class, it can be a smoking cessation program, it can be inviting something like Weight Watchers or another weight management program to come in and meet with the employees, anything that counts as a wellness program. There are some tax advantages to doing that. And there is also additional Medicare withholding. Again, it's called Medicare withholding. It's not going to Medicare, but it's an additional tax that will be used to fund some of the subsidies and some of the administrative expenses associated with this. And individuals will also have a Medicare assessment on their net investment income. So taxes are going up, insurance premiums are going up, we're all going to be broke.
So it's the Affordable Care Act.
It's the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, and when you go to the Covered California presentations, you will hear for an hour about how much more affordable it's going to be, because the medical community is going to start cooperating and managing care in a better way so that the costs over time will all go down. And I've sat through 2 or 3 of those town halls and heard that from, the one in San Francisco was particularly vigorous on the benefits long-term of affordable care and how the health care costs overall would just be deflated by everybody having insurance coverage and having access. And to some extent, it makes sense that there is a whole emphasis on preventive care. The insurance has to cover preventive care. You've got the wellness programs, and, well, baby care and mandating child pediatric care. So if you're focusing on those kinds of things, maybe the heart attack care costs go down.
Now for comparison, how does California Care compare to Kaiser rates?
How does Covered California compare to Kaiser?
Yeah.
Okay, well, because there's also a Cal Choice, and there was a program called California Care. That's why I got confused. Do you want me to address that now?
Just so we know.
Well, the short answer is it sort of depends, because Kaiser is participating in the Covered California, as well as Kaiser will have plans outside. And the rates are determined, there's no issue with any pre-existing condition, but they're based on your age and your region. So it's a depends on where you live. There are 19 regions in the state of California. Kaiser's only participating in 18 of them because they just don't have a service area in one of them. And it depends on your age, and it depends on where you are.
Generally.
We're seeing rates on the individual side. If you don't qualify for a subsidy, I'm seeing rates higher than what you can get outside right now. But the problem is going to be that some of the plans that are available right now, carriers aren't going to continue offering them. People are automatically going to be mapped from whatever Kaiser plan they're on now to either if it's in the exchange or outside, a different plan. So sorry, it's a hard one to say what are the rates going to be.
Okay? And there will be, insurers are required now to spend a certain proportion of their income actually paying for health care. And if they don't achieve the appropriate loss ratio, the difference needs to come back in the form of rebates to the consumers and to the companies that have purchased the insurance. So,
Yeah, I didn't get that at all.
So I pay, collectively, Kaiser gets $100,000 in premium and is supposed to spend at least $90,000 of that premium on actually delivering health care. If it spends only $85 delivering health care, that $5 is rebated by law. So the insurance carriers are not going to be as profitable as they were.
Does that rebate only apply to policies inside the Covered California plans?
No, it applies to all policies.
It's already been in existence before Covered California, because Covered California isn't officially open. So Blue Shield sent out checks this year. So people that have coverage with Blue Shield, and it depends on your group size as to how big it has to, what the ratio has to be. But Blue Shield met 76.4%, so they were under the 80% that they were required for small groups, so they had to refund.
Refund to the employer? Or
they refunded the employer. That's the nightmare. The employer then has to decide you might know this better than I. They can either use it for future expenses or they have to refund it to the employees.
Yeah, and that actually is a complete mess.
It is.
It is a complete mess.
But I thought they also refunded to individuals. So if you have an individual policy, they refunded to the individual.
That is correct. That is correct. It's the individuals who buy directly from the carrier are going to get a check back. But if you pay through your employer, then the employer may or may not give you that money back.
I saw what Time Warner and IBM were pushing their retirees who are not yet 65 out of their plans and into the Obamacare. Does that portend a large increase in the pool and will that of users, and does that affect the rates?
Well, there is the individual. I know I have it coming up, but there's an individual responsibility, and what I have read is that, in large part, the older people will not be required to participate in the individual responsibility. If your employer does not provide you appropriate coverage or any coverage, you are required to obtain your own insurance coverage. And if you do not obtain your own insurance coverage, there is a tax penalty. And it's not whopping $95. And it's gonna go up to about $700, and then it will be indexed according to the cost of living increases. From what I've read, insurance costs generally go up faster than the cost of living. So you might be way better off, if you're healthy, to take the risk of not buying insurance and just pay the additional penalty. If your insurance is more than, I believe it is 8% of your family income, you don't have to pay the penalty. If you are a member of a Native American tribe, you don't have to pay the penalty. If you are a member of a religious organization that does not believe in health care or insurance, you don't have to pay the penalty. There are lots of ways that people can get out of paying the penalty. But the numbers that I have seen suggest that people who are close to retirement age are it's going to be, the costs of their care is almost always going to exceed that 8% of their income, because as you get older, the premiums go up. And even before you're eligible for Medicare or Medicaid.
And as I understood it, the corporations, the large corporates, saw an advantage for those people who weren't yet 65 to take their in-house retirement plans and push them out into
Right, I think what the reason that the corporations are probably doing that, the retiree plans are expensive for them to maintain. The people that are older are higher utilizers. Medication costs are extremely high. So they could be, in a sense, trying to clean up their pool a little bit, but they did have separate retiree plans, so they weren't always mixed in with the regular population. I don't deal in that large of a market, but if they move them, it's a cost thing. They move them off. And the other thing is that they were doing the employees a favor in the past, because if they were beyond COBRA and they didn't want to take a HIPAA plan for whatever reason, they wanted to offer them, it was a guarantee for them. Now they don't have to worry about guarantee issue, because the marketplace says whether you're in the exchange or out of the exchange, the government says the insurance companies that have individual plans have to take everybody. So I would say it's intended to be a reduction in their overall cost, sure.
Net investment income.
Yes.
How does that play out with 401k?
I believe that the money that's within the 401k is not included in the net investment income.
No, but if you've got any kind of a good 401k, there will be increases, it'll make some money for you on the premiums, or at least it's supposed to. Will that get a new Medicare assessment? For some people, that might be a significant amount.
The 401k income is not taxed until you withdraw it. And so that would not be determined until the time, what the tax structure is at the time that you withdraw the income from the 401k.
But it could be for stock dividends that are within the 401k?
I believe. No. Okay. And then grandfathered plans, Colleen has already mentioned, there are very few of them. If you had a plan in place on March 23rd of 2010, and it has not been touched, you're providing at least the same benefits, not charging your employees any more for those benefits. You can continue to provide that plan, and it does not have to meet all of the requirements of the Affordable Care Act. It does not have to. It will have to provide some of them, like covering children up to age 26 and paying for and being enrolled within the first 90 days, but it doesn't have to cover all of the plans, all of the elements. But those plans have by and large gone away as the insurance marketplace has changed over the years. So what benefits are there for the small employer? The health care tax credit, which I mentioned. If you are paying for your employees and you are a small employer and you're providing coverage and the average income is less than $50,000, you can get a health care tax credit. The health care tax credit has gone up for, used to be 25 and now it's 35 percent of what you have paid for them. So it's available. The SHOP programs which is the, Colleen will be talking about in detail. And the large employer's obligations, you are required to provide insurance with certain benefits. It has to be 90 days sign up, it has to cover preventive care, it has to cover care for women, it has to provide other, bleh.
I'll get to them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get to some.
And, yes,
My correct understanding as far as large employers are concerned, that is known as the player pay requirement, was we had to offer an affordable plan that covered certain, that provided certain benefits or pay a tax or penalty if they put off to 2015, is that correct?
that is correct. And the penalty is $2,000 per employee if your coverage is non-existent, after the first 30 employees. So you get 30 free, and then it's $2,000 per year per employee. W-2 reporting requirements, identifying on the tax returns for your employees what the value of their health care is. And I'm gonna leave this to your case studies, yeah. And let you do that yours. Because we thought we would both talk about some of the real life questions that we face, and I think that limits time for both of us.
So, what does healthcare reform really mean? I mean, some of it, you've already addressed some of the questions that you have. My real thought is it means more of this. It's gonna cost us a lot more. There are some taxes, and I'm gonna address some of those. We've already talked about more government regulations, and it's making it more burdensome for the employer, but ultimately, hopefully, more insured people. In my practice, the way I look at it is we do a fair amount of health insurance. We do life insurance and long-term care, but on the individual medical side, we have to do quite a bit of legwork right now to see if somebody's eligible. So we'll take what we call we pre-screen anonymously, and we send an anonymous request to an insurance company. We say, here's the profile of this person. Will you take them or not? It takes a lot of legwork. So that's something that's going to go away. We won't have to do that anymore. And what happens now is that companies will come back and say yes, no, or maybe, and maybe with a 20%, 20, 25, 30, 35, up to 75, maybe even higher, 100% increase over what the regular rate is, based on, depending on what the condition is. So I'm looking forward to that going away. I'm hoping that we're going to get more people in the market. I'm hoping that we're going to get more people insured. I just am not confident that it's going to be less expensive.
So the pre-existing conditions can be taken into account for
They can't
rating, but not for coverage.
Today. They can today. They can't for 2014. No rating, no, all the rates are just based on, there are three things that they can consider, in California, they're going to consider, is the rating area, age, and the third one, because California did not allow smoker status. The federal law says that you could take into consideration somebody who's a smoker. So, they're gender-based, I think, too. So I'll get to a slide with that. These are just some of the options that are available. I want to make it clear that because of I think, my opinion is that the exchange is going to be the best place for people that might be eligible for a subsidy. And it's not, there is still going to be a marketplace on the outside for people that are not eligible for the subsidy. And I've been going through the training. I did the 8 hours of classroom on Friday, and I started the 4 hours of computer-based before I can take my test to be certified to sell in the exchange. And I'm just sort of surprised at the information that they're collecting in the exchange. They want to know, of course, Social Security, date of birth, that sort of thing, where you live. But collecting a lot of data for people that are not making sure that they're legal residents. So I'm just not accustomed to having to ask someone what their anything about the naturalization, if they've got a green card, what the number is, how long they're eligible to be here, that sort of thing. So there's just more information that the government is going to be gathering, and it's really so there aren't any health questions, but there's more status questions.
And I believe that is to assure that they're not paying subsidies on people that are not lawfully here.
So there also will be some private exchanges, as well as the Covered California.
that some companies that already exist in the marketplace. In California, typically it was so that, there's one in California, so that you can have Kaiser in a small group market, you can have Kaiser with another insurance company. An insurance company doesn't like to share too much of the pot. They want a certain percentage, so they want 60, 65, 70, maybe even 75%, depends on the carrier, of your population. So getting to be able to share with Kaiser, there were private exchanges already exist, where companies have said, we'll go into this, and we're not worried about our percentage, we're just participating in this exchange, in the private exchange. So the California, Covered California will have the same idea. Covered California has two pieces to it, individual as well as shop. So the shop is for the small groups, that's where you can get the tax credit. The individual, that's where you would get the tax credit or subsidies or cost sharing, helping if you're low enough, not low enough that you qualify for, for Medi-Cal, but you would, but you're maybe 100% or 250% of the federal poverty level, you can get some assistance on co-pays too. So it's not just the deductible. I think I've covered those. I tend to work more in the medium to small group market. Most of my employers are under 100. I have some that have over 100 employees, but they've got a lot of they're seasonal or a lot of turnover. So I don't have, my groups are not typically not over 100. So the question is, how much does it cost? Right now, healthcare, the trend right now for most of my employer groups is roughly about 10%. Now that's just the healthcare, the increased cost of the insurance. The additional taxes on there that the insurance companies are required to collect, they're just a conduit. They're collecting these taxes and they have to pass them on to provide helping with the subsidies for the exchange, government taxes. It could increase your premiums by roughly maybe 5 to 6%. So if I say the trend is 10, but you get a rate increase of 15%, or if but of course you understand with the trend, there are numbers below that are going to be below 10%. There are above that too. So if I'm delivering a rate increase right now, and I'm coming up and they're getting 15, my own policy is slated to have a 30% increase for next year. We're going to move.
You can do better than that.
We can do better than that. So there are additional taxes to pay for the benefits. Essential health benefits are the mandates for preventive care. People say it's free, and it is, no copay. You don't have to meet the deductible, and as long as it's in network. But what is free? That's the question. What really is free? Here's some information on the penalties. Did I skip one? No. Okay. So these are the penalties for individuals, but Maggie already sort of addressed that, how it will increase over time if you don't buy insurance. So that's why they have this big open enrollment period right now until March 31st of next year. They want people to get in. They want them in. In California in particular, California was the first state to say we're going to operate our own exchange. And then, no, but it has to be self-sustaining within a year. So they need people in this. They really need people in it. Some of the additional fees, the top blue line, the patient-centered outcome research, we call it PCORI. Transitional reinsurance, Maggie had listed on hers already. There's a health insurer fee, and later there'll be an excise tax. So these are either applied as a per member on your plan, and one seminar I went to, they said per belly button. So it's not employee only, it's however many dependents are on the plan also. Even if as an employer you're not paying for those dependents, the insurance company has to collect that tax. And in some situations the tax will be broken out on the bill, and in some it won't. So I'm not a defender of the insurance companies, believe me, I fight with them over claims often. But this makes the insurance companies look even worse, because they have to collect these taxes, and they can't say exactly how much the tax is per person, per group, anything like that. It's just going to be added to fees. So some of the additional costs I think that that I've already addressed some of these, but there are the mandated benefits, the free preventive care. There are 10 essential health benefits that have to be on plans, and I'm going to get to that in a second. There's a different slide for it. There's a limitation on how high deductibles can be. So how many of you know what kind of plan you're on? Okay. So HMO or PPO?
PPO.
PPO.
Okay, anybody on a PPO that has a 250 deductible? 500. I'm bidding, okay, good, 500. Anybody that has 1,000? Okay, anybody that has 3,000? You have an HSA probably. Is it with your employer?
It's with my wife's employer, she works for Bayer, so it's the high deductible.
Okay.
We have to meet like $3,000 a year.
Right, so, and you have a separate account to fund,
We don't pay for it.
but you have a, even to fund for the deductible? HSA?
Right.
Okay, so the HSA is a couple years ago were the plan to go to. You go to this high deductible plan, you have this separate account, you can sock money into it, you can spend it if you want on allowable medical expenses, or you can just keep the money in there and just pay for the deductible. Well, now the government, so the premiums were great for a little while, but they started to decline. And so now the government is saying, we can't have a deductible higher than 2,000, when many of the HSAs, at least in the small group market, are 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, 4,500. So if you're mandated to bring this deductible down, what's going to happen to the premium? Yeah, I mean, it's not. In addition to, I'm completely a proponent for the wellness benefits and the preventive care. I always tell, in an employee meeting, I always say, use these benefits. If you have a dental plan, go for the cleanings. If you have a medical plan, go for your, women go for their annual. Men are the ones who are sort of, they are the stragglers going in, but the welcome to 50 colonoscopy, go for it. As long as it's just, as long as it's preventive and not diagnostic, it's paid for. Which is a great benefit. Coverage must pay for at least 60% of the expected cost. Another good one is no annual lifetime limits. The HMO versus PPO, HMOs were really the first ones to go and say, we're not going to have a maximum. We're not going to have a maximum that we will cover for you. It was an unlimited lifetime. Now all plans have that. Some of them in 2013 can have annual limits on certain things, and that will be changing. Dependents covered to age 26, that's a big deal. Employer compliance, Maggie already covered. The rate differentials, the woman from New Zealand, I don't remember your name, but you asked about rates difference. Was it? Oh, sorry. You're in New Zealand. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. You're the nurse.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. The rates now can't have from top to bottom, if your age in the 60 to 64 bracket or in the 21 or under bracket. So 21 and above, the ratio can't be any more than 3 to 1. Some places right now we have 7 to 1, maybe 8 to 1, maybe more. If you're in a small company and you've got those bulletproof 21-year-olds and you're looking at your 64-year-olds who are still working, or your 65-year-olds that are continuing to work, those premiums jump pretty high. So do you think that these are going to come down a lot? The 64-year-olds, what's going to happen? The 21-year-olds are going to come up. They have to do it. So it's it has to be no more than 3 to 1. And then these are the taxes we've already talked about. I've addressed, I think, everything on here.
Neither of us talked about rescission except for
in the cases of fraud. But insurance companies, I don't consider that new. I know it's part of the law, but in California at least, that was, as long as people were truthful on their applications, there have been, I know, lawsuits in California about this, but the insurance companies could rescind unless there was fraud. And no experience rating means they can't look at your group and say, what's your size, there's a, on your specific law, what we call a loss ratio, how much utilization has there been, and
So-
the preventive care. Go ahead.
Does that mean that every company with the same, like, if there were two companies and one company had someone who has been treated for cancer for the last 10 years and the other company, everybody's healthy, the employees are all the same ages, they should have exactly the same premiums? Is that what you're saying?
No, because they'll be, if they're in the same region.
Same region?
If they're in the same region, but otherwise they should have the, now they could, the insurance companies will, not every insurance company will have the same. They're going to adjust they'll have their own rates. But with one insurance company,
They have to
They would
offer
have
the
the-
same rate, so.
yeah. That's what we're still waiting for rates. We don't
I
have any rates
noticed.
yet for the small group. They have some plan designs, but we don't have any rates. We can look up rates for the premiums for individuals. Maggie covered these. The summary of benefits and coverages, I'll just show you a sample of, sorry, because I was going to skip to that. Maggie covered this too, the notification of the exchanges. We don't have to really worry about it right now for next year, but for the following year, we will have to. And there could be penalties.
So this was what the exchange, the notice was supposed to contain. Basically, it's the government saying you have to advertise for us. That's the way I look at it, because they want people they want people to participate in the exchange, advertise for us, or else we're going to penalize you. So the SPCs, in my language, in my world, that's what, since last year, at renewal time, every employer is required to give their employees a certain version of what the plan description. So in the past, in an employer meeting, where you got your packets on your open enrollment period or something like that, mostly it was just regular insurance company description of the plan. Now, it has to be a certain size, certain language, certain terminology, and it's supposed to be more easily understandable to the rank and file employees. But you're required to hand it out in advance of any major plan changes, and then to a new hire within, I think it's 14 days of them being hired. So this is a sample. This happens to be Blue Shields, just because I grabbed it, but this is a sample of an SBC, or summary of benefits and coverages. So over the last year, since last September actually, if your company has renewed their benefit plan, and in the small group market, people don't all renew in January. It could be a new plan that started in February or March or April. We have renewals throughout the year. So we've been going to our clients since last September, actually they were for October renewals, saying, hey, we have to give this to the employees. I would hand them out if there was a meeting, but if the employer didn't want to have a meeting, we just need to have them provide it to the employees electronically or make sure they receive it. So that's a sample. This is a big one coming that, and particularly for law firms, most of you were, I heard, small. If you're one or two, if you're husband and wife groups, or you don't have a W-2 employee, the carriers are not, you will have to go to an individual plan. So I have several law firms that are husband and wife law firms, and or I have a couple companies, not necessarily always law firms, but the husband and wife, both people are maybe they're owners. They appear on articles of incorporation, they're officers, something like that. Those are things that we could submit to prove that it was a real business. And now it has to be under the ACA rules and the California regulations, these groups will no longer qualify as small businesses. It's forcing them to go into the individual market, either the exchange or whatever companies still offering individual plans outside the exchange. Or hire. Yeah. Yes, or hire someone. Right, not related. So that's a big one for, I was thinking this for solo practitioners or small business, that's a key piece that people will need some advice on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Going back to the summary of benefits and coverage, I just didn't quite catch. When does that need to be provided to employees?
It's at your renewal, in advance of the renewal, unless you
How far in advance? I'm sorry.
for last year they allowed 30 days, and I think for the next year it's going to be 60 days.
Okay. And we can just
They
give
gave
the
us
one
safe
that,
harbor for the
when
rest.
we get that summary of benefits from the insurance company, we can just pass that on. That's good enough.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks, sorry.
Any more questions? Do you guys need to stretch or anything? Or need more air or anything like that? Drinks?
I can turn the AC back on, you guys will have to talk up.
Okay. Oh, we're not loud enough? Okay.
But I'll put it on, how's that?
All right. So this was the small group eligibility that I just mentioned on the last. The new census it must be the employer plus one employee. There's going to be a new census required, so we call it a list of the employees is a census. And we ask, in the past it's just been employee plus spouse or employee plus child or no dependents, whatever it happens to be. Now the employer has to collect spouse's age, children's age, because the premiums are going to be determined based on the age of the children as well as the age of the spouses. So for those small businesses that was a husband and wife or partners or or domestic partners, well, let's just stick with the husband and wife because some of the insurance depends on how the insurance companies handle it. But you know what I'm saying. If the younger spouse would oftentimes be the enrolled employee, save some money that way. Doesn't matter now. It's going to be rated. The whole family is going to be rated based on the age of the dependents. So when you asked about the age of where the locations of what they can determine, it's based on age or geographic location. So here's a sample census that's the sort of data that we're going to be collecting. So we'll need to know the age of the, so we have Fred and Wilma and Pebbles, and depending on how old the child is, if they're under 21, they'll have one rate. If they're 21 to 26, they're going to have rates based on their 21 or their 22 or their 23. And Mr. Slate just has his wife on there. Do you guys know who Mr. Slate was?
Yes.
You do? Forrest, tell me who was Mr. Slate.
Mr. Slate was the owner of the construction company where Fred worked.
He was. And do you know, I heard this, I don't know, but there's Mr. Slate. There's some trivia thing about Mr. Slate that in different parts of the series, they gave him 3 different first names. So, yeah, one of the guys in my office read that.
What was his daughter's name?
Did you know? What was it?
Concretia.
Very good. Little Concretia. Here's a sample of what I was saying about depending on the size of the size of the family or the age of the dependents, the rates will be different. The first 3 children are rated. If you have 5 or more, they're free. I think it's they're rating the first 3.
No, they're not. Maybe for insurance.
I'm pretty sure it's 3, and after that, that's all we have to do.
It'd be nice if they did that for college.
I know. So Maggie addressed a lot of this. I'm just going to go through a few things on Covered California, just because I've been doing the training for it. So I mentioned that there are 2 segments to it. There's the individual side, and the shop is for small group, the small employer health options plan, the small business, approved by HHS, and there's the website for it. There are some other websites out there that are close to it, so you have to be careful.
Yeah, if you type in allcoveredcalifornia.com, it's somebody else's, and it's actually not even a working website, but it's somebody who's going to try to rip off.
I got an email today from somebody it's the health benefits something, covered health benefits, trying to sell that I would be able to get leads from this guy's website because people are going to be logging in or finding him or something. I think it was. Yeah. So these are the names of the plans that are participating in the shop exchange, which is the shop is different. The participants are different than those that are in the individual. And as Maggie pointed out, like in the city, Chinese Community Health is really trying to grow their business, I think, but they're participating in it. But the state did select regional carriers as well as state as larger and regular insurance companies.
So what happens if somebody works in Contra Costa and lives in the city?
I think some of them, because Kaiser does the same thing, but usually you have to live, they'll only offer it if you live or work within a certain area, so it might not come up as available to them.
Okay.
So I'm not certain, but that's the way Kaiser, it depends on whether you live or work. So remains to be seen, but usually that's the way it goes. This is just the landing page, yes?
When you're looking at an employer and an employee, does the employee have to elect to have that coverage if you want to be the shop, I guess it would be called?
Well,
or can you have, several employees, but maybe for whatever reason they're not electing to be covered by your plan?
so am I hearing the question is, if you're an employer and you're offering benefits to the employees and some of them choose not to participate, what happens?
Yes, are you still a shop, or do you then go into some individual?
Again, I guess it depends. If you have enough employees that you can still have, there's a sort of a freebie for a while for this first part of the year. They want people in, so they're not worried about participation, meaning how big the group is. But if your employer offers you coverage and you decline the coverage and you want to go to the individual exchange, if the coverage is deemed affordable that the employer is offering, you won't be eligible for subsidies. So an employee can't really play that game. If the employer is actually offering a real plan, then the employees can't say, I don't want to be on this and I'm going to get the subsidy. So there'll be a question of how many employers will they drop coverage. But the other issue is going to be if your wages, if it doesn't necessarily help if the employer says I'm going to drop coverage and increase your wages, you might not qualify anyway for the subsidy at least.
So, did I answer it though?
I think so.
Okay.
And the individual, if they declined the coverage, would then be in a position that if they didn't pick up alternate coverage, either through the Covered California or some provider, that they'd have the tax liabilities.
Right.
But one of the reasons that you have to provide the notice is so that employees understand what they're getting and what they might look for elsewhere.
But they might be covered under their husband's plan.
Exactly.
Right, and so in our terminology, that's, if they're covered under a spouse's plan, are they considered a valid waiver? And so they don't count against your participation. So that's usually okay, because it doesn't count against, because you've got group coverage or valid coverage.
And larger employers are going to be at a point where they're going to have to automatically enroll people. And so people will have to affirmatively opt out.
Right. So Covered California has, their website's actually not too bad. I find it interesting, maybe this is just a commentary, but that they feel that their marketplace is more heavily in Southern California. They're only advertising, I think that they're roughly expecting maybe 400,000 eligible in Northern California, but the bulk of it, so they started their advertising down south. They started their classes for certification more quickly down south. They've had the town halls throughout the state, but also they're looking for the low-income people that are not at Medi-Cal, just above the federal poverty line. They want them insured. More, they're targeting more the Hispanic community. That's where there's a bigger population of that in Southern California. So, but the interesting thing is everything has to be done online. So you're dealing with a lower income, perhaps lower educated population, but everything, all the stuff, the applications and everything has to be done online. We could do a paper application, but they tell us it'll take more than 10 days just for them to acknowledge they've received it. But if to qualify for the subsidies, they won't let you have to go through this process online. So the plans that are available in the basic plan designs are, we call them the metallic plans. And as you go up in value, metallic value, then the plans are getting more expensive and they cover more. So bronze, silver, gold, platinum. The bronze plan meaning it will cover, the insurance company part will cover 60% and your exposure is 40%. Similar to what you have, you might have an 80-20 plan, you might have a 70-30 plan, something like that right now, after your deductible. One key is, we have many employers right now that will have a base plan and say, I'll pay 100% of this plan, and then the employees have the option to buy up. That won't be possible in here, within the exchange. If the employer picks a silver plan, everybody has to stay with silver. You can choose different companies from those participants. The other nuance to it is that the insurance companies are not going to offer the same network necessarily in the exchange that they're going to offer outside. So there's some drilling down that has to be done to see if, just because you could say, is my doctor a Blue Shield doctor or an Anthem doctor? Okay, well, sorry, Shield for this. Is my doctor a Shield doctor, but is it in the network that participates in the exchange? You also have to drill down about medications. They're going to have a different formulary in the exchange. They might. I mean, they can have a separate formulary in the exchange than outside. A lot of work. So if the employer just says, hey, I'm going to move here, there's more work to determining if this is a good move for myself, for me, or for my employees. Here are the list of essential health benefits, and this is from the Covered California website. These are the 10 main things that have to be in a plan.
And that means that it's included at no additional charge.
These are not the preventive. That's different.
No.
Yeah. Preventive is a no, right.
It's just that your coverage has to have that.
Your coverage has to include these. It can have more things, but it needs to have these 10 basic. And the pediatric services were what was they're just now telling us who the providers are going to be for the dental plan and what's allowed in pediatric. And then of course there's the issue if there's a dental plan available through the shop and you have a dental plan, but you're paying a different there's a calculation that has to be done, or the plans have to adjust so your children aren't double covered. There'll be lots of work for this. This is another look at those standard benefit tiers where I mentioned that as we go up in metallic level, the plans get richer. The law
says though that the maximum out of pocket for one person can't be any higher than $6,350. I don't know if that's going to adjust or when, but that's for the coming year. So that means that you have your deductible, and after your deductible, you are paying a percentage with the insurance company to a cap, and then after that, the insurance company pays the balance based on a calendar year. So your worst case scenario shouldn't be for a single person shouldn't be more than $6,350. So these are set. So in this sense, it might be okay. There's some standard plans. All the companies that participate are going to have these benefits. It's a little bit like Medicare. When people go into the Medicare supplement market, not the Medicare Advantage, but the government said in the Medicare world, there are certain supplements, and they all have every supplement has a certain level of benefit. It's kind of like that. And I find it interesting because the Medicare open enrollment, at least for the Part D, same time of year. For going forward after the first year, it will be October 15th to December 7th, just like the Medicare open enrollment is for the prescription drugs. I don't know what it means, I just find it interesting. Here's a little bit about the assistance, that if you're below where you fall in the federal poverty line. So, and these are the qualifying income levels, and as you can see, well, I mentioned $62,000 for my husband and I, based on your modified adjusted gross. The waiting period, the ACA rule said that the federal rule said an employer could have more than 90 days. So those employers that have seasonal employees that knew that they were going to be seasonal and they wanted to have a 6-month wait, or you can't. There are some ways that you can have benchmarks that an employee has to meet. Maybe they have to be licensed, or they have to pass their license exam for something, so that it might be slightly longer. But essentially, the federal rules are 90 days, and then California set it at 60. And California is in the process of trying to change it, so it's the first of the month following 60, rather than whatever the 60th day is. If you're a hiring manager and you hire people 5 days in a row, then you have to remember 60 days from now, person A is on this day, person B, it would be a nightmare. And the state says, well, we didn't mean it to be that complicated. We'll try to fix it. I serve as the ledge chair for my association, so I sit in on ledge calls. And the maximum waiting periods apply both to grandfathered and non-grandfathered plans. So the changes to the rates I already mentioned about the 3-to-1 ratio. That's going to be you're going to see a big change in that, because in the small group market, employers are used to them being age banded. In the big market, they're composite rates. So usually if you're over 50 employees, it's here's my employee rate, here's my employee and spouse rate. But in the small group market, this will make a difference. And my little word at the bottom there, no RAFs. That's when you ask the question of if can people be rated differently. Now they can, based on their size and their health. It's called a risk adjustment factor. But those will go away.
So based on the geographic rate's going to be based on employees at Coke, but of course you have employees from all over the place. So each employee is going to get plopped in a different. Oh God. That's horrid. Okay.
These are the regions. Some regions will have the same. Well, they could have different zip codes, but if the employees are in the same region, they could have the same rate. They could have it. I mean, Alameda and Contra Costa, I think, could have the same rates. But that's just to give you an idea of what the rating areas are. I had a case study, and then do we have any more questions? So one of the things I did, I just sort of addressed, I thought you might be interested in something that if you had to advise clients right now. So you've gotten information about what are the compliance pieces that are coming, what can you look forward to in 2014. But if insurance companies are basically having, and I don't mean this to sound salesy, but the insurance companies are having sales right now. So they're saying, hey, if you early renew and you want to take an effective date of December 1st, 2013, you can stay with your existing plan. You don't have to, some of the compliance things you have to meet, some of the taxes you still have to pay. But you can keep a 2013 plan. If you're at a low rate, you might want to do that. So we haven't, so the insurance companies are saying either, okay, thanks. You keep talking, I'll pass.
So the insurance companies are saying, hey, we'll take a look at you, and let's say you're with Kaiser, and Kaiser will say, if you have a January effective date or a February effective date, you might want to back it up and have a December. And if you want to early renew, we'll give you that for 12 months. It just seems to me that it's interesting. So the companies participate in the exchange and they want the exchange to continue functioning. But if the exchange only has 1 year to be self-sustaining, and there are these specials that every insurance company is offering to say, hey, let us keep your business or let us attract it. So this is just a sample of what we just did for a client. So they happen to be with Blue Shield. They happen to offer 2 plans. And this is a company that had 8 employees, and they are in Pleasant Hill, some of the things for 2014. So that was option 2. Then option 3 was, well, maybe the benefits are a little bit rich and people aren't using them, or there's a budget and we need to cut some expenses. So we called it a downgrade option, and taking it in December for 2014 renewal. And then so there was a full downgrade with option with Blue Shield, and then Anthem also happened to be competitive. This company has a separate division that has Kaiser for those employees. That will remain to be seen if this is at some point considered discriminatory, because the Blue Shield is only being offered to this group of 8, and the other 35, I guess, are having to get Kaiser. But for them, it's a little easier because Kaiser, these people have it's a maintenance staff, so it's easier for them to go to Kaiser to get interpreters. Some companies have done that, just taking Kaiser because they can get help easier than they can get at some of the other hospitals or doctors. Yes?
I have a question about this. We just had sort of a similar situation. We have an Anthem plan in place, and we were offered early renewal if we want to opt in. So basically, our rates aren't going to change. We've already gotten our rates from